Do they know about this? That was the question the judge asked me. Not, is this authentic? Not, is this legal? Not even, is this yours? He looked at the sealed envelope in his hand, then at me, a 68-year-old grandmother standing alone at the defense table, and asked, "Do they know about this?" And I said, "Not yet." Let me take you back. Before we continue, please hit the like button, subscribe to the channel, and turn on the notification bell for updates. 14 years earlier, I was standing in a hospital room that smelled like antiseptic and fear. My daughter, Claire Ellis, was 32 years old. Pale. Exhausted. Fresh out of an emergency C-section. Machines humming around her like mechanical guardians. In my arms were her newborn twins. Ethan and Lily. 6 pounds each. Tiny fingers. Identical hospital bracelets. Soft little breasts that felt like promises. Claire didn't look at them much. She looked at me. "Mom," she whispered, her voice thin and distant. "Just until I recover. Just until I recover." Have you ever heard a sentence that sounded harmless at the time, but later echoed like a warning? I nodded. Of course I would help. That's what mothers do, right? We step in. We catch what our children drop. We hold what they can't carry. I took the babies home that night. My house in Columbus, Ohio, a quiet 3-bedroom place my late husband and I had bought 30 years earlier, suddenly felt very small. 2 cribs in the guest room. Formula on the counter. Diapers stacked like sandbags. Claire said she'd be back in a few weeks. She never came back. At first, it didn't feel alarming. Post-surgery recovery can take time. Emergency C-sections are traumatic. Hormones crash. Bodies heal slowly. I told myself she needed space. She stopped answering her phone after week 3. By week 6, her voicemail was full. By month 3, her apartment lease had ended. No forwarding address. No explanation. No goodbye. Let me ask you something, at what point does waiting turn into realizing? I was 54 when my husband died. I knew what grief felt like. But this? This was different. This was being handed 2 fragile lives while your own daughter quietly disappeared. And here's the part no one talks about, there was no dramatic abandonment scene. No tearful confession. No note left on a kitchen table. Just silence. And silence can be louder than anything. People always ask why I didn't call the police. Call them and say what? My adult daughter isn't answering her phone? She wasn't missing. She wasn't underage. She had every legal right to walk away from me. But what about her children? That's where it gets complicated. There were no adoption papers. No termination of parental rights. Just discharge paperwork listing her as mother and me as temporary caregiver. Temporary. That word would come back to haunt me. For months, I lived in a blur of exhaustion. 2 newborns at 54 is not a gentle lifestyle change. It's survival mode. 2 a.m. feedings. 4 a.m. crying. Laundry that never ends. Bills that quietly multiply. Did you know raising a child from birth to age 18 averages over $300,000 in the United States? And that doesn't include college. I was retired. Living on savings and a modest pension. But none of that felt optional. When Ethan wrapped his tiny hand around my finger, when Lily's eyes followed my voice across the room, I wasn't thinking about legal definitions. I was thinking, they need someone. Weeks turned into months. Months into years. Birthdays passed. First steps. First words. First scraped knee. First day of kindergarten. They called me grandma. Sometimes they slipped and called me mom. And every time, I corrected them gently. But inside? Inside, something shifted. Because biology may create life. But presence sustains it. Still, there was always a shadow. What if she comes back? What if she says I stole them? What if she says I kept them from her? Those questions lived in the back of my mind for 14 years. And then one afternoon, when Ethan and Lily were both 14 years old, tall, thoughtful, independent, the doorbell rang. I opened it. Claire stood there. Older. Sharper. Well-dressed. No trace of the fragile woman in the hospital bed. Next to her stood a man in a gray suit holding a leather briefcase. She didn't hug me. She didn't ask about the twins. She didn't say she was sorry. She said, "I'm here to take my children back." And just like that, the past, the silence, the sacrifice, the sleepless nights, was rewritten into something criminal. But that wasn't even the worst part. The worst part was what she accused me of next. And what she didn't know I had kept all these years. Because 14 years earlier, in that hospital room, something happened that she clearly believed I had forgotten. She was wrong. And when she walked into court thinking she was reclaiming her children, she had no idea what was waiting inside that sealed envelope. But what happened before that envelope ever reached the judge would unravel everything, and expose a truth neither of us were prepared for. The first lie wasn't that she was coming back. The first lie was smaller. She said she'd call tomorrow. Tomorrow came and went. No call. At first, I defended her. To friends. To myself. To the quiet house that now echoed with twin cries. She's recovering. She's overwhelmed. She just needs time. But here's the strange thing about time, it doesn't pause while you're making excuses for someone. It keeps moving. And so did I. The twins were 6 weeks old when I realized Claire's phone had been disconnected. Not going to voicemail. Not ringing endlessly. Disconnected. I remember standing in my kitchen, cordless phone pressed to my ear, listening to that automated voice repeat the message like it was nothing. I tried her apartment complex next. Lease terminated. No forwarding address. Have you ever felt your stomach drop without physically moving? That's what it felt like. Now here's something people don't understand about abandonment. It's rarely dramatic. There's no thunderstorm. No screaming match. No final slam of the door. It's administrative. Utilities shut off. Mail returned. Silence formalized. I made an appointment with a family attorney when the twins were 3 months old. Her name was Laura Benson, 52 at the time. Sharp. Direct. The kind of woman who doesn't waste sympathy on confusion. You don't have legal custody, she told me, flipping through hospital paperwork. You have possession. Possession. As if they were furniture. She explained the reality. Claire, as their biological mother, retained full parental rights. Without formal relinquishment or a court order, I was in a fragile gray zone. If she comes back tomorrow and demands them, Laura said, legally, you'd have very little standing. I drove home in silence that day. 2 car seats in the back. 2 tiny heads bobbing gently. Completely unaware that their stability depended on paperwork that didn't exist. I considered filing for emergency guardianship. But that required serving Claire notice. And I didn't know where she was. You can't serve papers to a ghost. So I did what women in my generation are conditioned to do. I adapted. My retirement shifted overnight. I dipped into savings. Formula alone was nearly $300 a month. Diapers? Another $150. Pediatric visits, vaccinations, clothing they outgrew every 8 weeks. At 54, most of my friends were planning vacations. I was measuring life in ounces and nap schedules. And yet. Here's the contradiction, I wasn't resentful. Exhausted? Yes. Afraid? Absolutely. But resentful? No. Because when Lily laughed for the first time, a sudden, surprised giggle at Ethan's hiccups, it didn't feel like sacrifice. It felt like purpose. Still, nights were the hardest. 2:13 a.m. 3:47 a.m. 5:02 a.m. In the quiet between feedings, doubts crept in. Was Claire safe? Was she struggling somewhere? Was I supposed to search harder? I hired a private investigator when the twins were 6 months old. Just for peace of mind. The report came back thin. No recent employment records. Minimal credit activity. No hospital admissions. No criminal history. No trace of relocation filings. It was as if she had intentionally reduced her footprint. And here's a detail I didn't tell anyone at the time. She hadn't listed a father on the birth certificates. No second parent to pursue. No shared custody complications. Just her. And me. Years passed. Ethan grew into a quiet observer. He studied things before touching them. Even as a toddler, he seemed to calculate risks. Lily was different. Expressive. Bold. If she felt something, the entire room knew. They balanced each other. By age 4, they had stopped asking when their mother was coming home. Because I had stopped saying she would. At 8 years old, Ethan asked me a question I had rehearsed answers for but never wanted to hear. "Grandma, did our mom not want us?" It's amazing how one sentence from a child can pierce straight through an adult's carefully constructed calm. I didn't lie. But I didn't tell the whole truth either. "Your mom wasn't ready," I said softly. Sometimes adults struggle. Struggle. Another gentle word for something much sharper. When the twins turned 9, I received the only message Claire sent in 14 years. An email. No greeting. No apology. Just one line. "Are they healthy?" That was it. Not "how are they?" Not "what are they like?" Not "do they ask about me?" Just "healthy." I replied with updates. School achievements. Photos attached. I even offered to set up a call. She never responded. Tell me something, if you truly intend to return for your children, do you stay silent for 14 years? Or do you keep a thread connected? That email changed something in me. Until then, I had believed she might come back broken. But that message? It felt clinical. Detached. And then, when Ethan and Lily were 14, tall enough to look me nearly eye to eye, that doorbell rang. Claire stood there transformed. Confident. Composed. Strategic. And beside her, Daniel Reeves, 48 years old, tailored suit, the posture of a man who enjoys courtroom victories. "My client," he said calmly, "never relinquished parental rights." Client. Not daughter. My client intends to resume custody immediately. Resume. As if she had paused a movie. That was the moment I understood something chilling. She wasn't here for reconciliation. She wasn't here for apologies. She was here for possession. And the accusation she filed the next morning would turn 14 years of quiet devotion into something that sounded criminal on paper. But what she didn't realize was that the past had left behind more than just memories. It's a strange experience, being accused of stealing the very children who saved your life. That's how it began. Not with shouting. Not with tears. With paperwork. 3 days after Claire showed up at my door, I was served with a formal petition. Family Court of Franklin County. Petitioner, Claire Ellis, age 46. Respondent, Margaret Ellis, age 68. The claim? Custodial interference. Emotional alienation. Unlawful retention of minors. Unlawful retention. I remember sitting at my kitchen table, the twins upstairs doing homework, reading the words over and over again. It's fascinating how legal language can twist reality. 14 years of school lunches. 14 years of dentist appointments. 14 years of fevers and science fairs and parent-teacher conferences. Reduced to retention. Claire's filing painted a picture I barely recognized. According to her, she had suffered severe postpartum depression after the emergency C-section at age 32. She claimed she temporarily placed the twins with me while seeking treatment out of state. She alleged that when she stabilized and attempted to reconnect, I discouraged contact and manipulated the children's perception. Manipulated. That word hurt more than anything else. Because here's the truth, I spent years protecting her image. I never told the twins she disappeared. I never said she chose freedom over responsibility. I told them she was struggling. And now, she was saying I poisoned them against her. Have you ever been blamed for protecting someone? That's a particular kind of irony. Claire's attorney, Daniel Reeves, was strategic. 48 years old, sharp features, the kind of voice that never rises but always carries authority. In his initial statement, he framed it cleanly. My client was vulnerable. She trusted her mother. Instead of temporary assistance, she encountered calculated separation. Calculated. As if I had orchestrated something. The court date was set quickly. Family law moves fast when minors are involved. I hired my own attorney, Susan Patel, 54 years old. 25 years in family law. Calm. Analytical. The kind of woman who listens more than she speaks. She laid out the legal reality for me in plain terms. Margaret, biological parental rights are powerful. Unless they're formally terminated, courts prioritize reunification. But 14 years of absence is significant. Significant. Not definitive. That word hung in the air. Susan explained something viewers might not realize. In many states, abandonment requires proof of intent. It's not just about absence. It's about whether the parent intended to relinquish responsibility. Claire claimed she always intended to return. 14 years later. Let me ask you, how long does temporary last? 1 year? 5? 10? Or until it's convenient? Things escalated quickly. Claire requested immediate unsupervised visitation. She argued that the twins, Ethan and Lily, now both 14, were old enough to transition back under her care. Transition. As if they were transferring schools. That was the moment I had to tell them. Not everything. But enough. Ethan overheard me on the phone first. He was always perceptive. Quiet, observant Ethan. He stood in the hallway longer than I realized. That night, Lily confronted me directly. Is someone trying to take us away? There it was. The fear I had shielded them from for 14 years. I sat them down at the dining room table. The same one where they'd done homework for years, the same one where birthday candles had been blown out. Your mother is back, I said carefully. Silence. Ethan's jaw tightened. Lily blinked rapidly. She wants custody. Lily's first response wasn't anger. It was confusion. Why now? That question echoed everything I had been asking myself. Why now? And then something surfaced that shifted the ground beneath my feet. Susan did a financial background check on Claire. Recently declared bankruptcy. Unstable employment history. And, this part is critical, she had inquired about the twins' financial records. Most people didn't know this, but when my husband passed away 12 years ago, he left modest educational trust funds for Ethan and Lily. Nothing extravagant. But enough to cover college tuition at a state university. Accessible at age 18. 4 years from now. Coincidence? Maybe. But then Susan discovered something else. Claire had listed dependent children in a recent loan application. Dependent. On paper, reclaiming custody changed her financial profile dramatically. Now ask yourself, is this about motherhood? Or leverage? Courtroom day arrived. Judge Harold Whitman, 61 years old, respected for his no-nonsense rulings, presided calmly. Claire testified first. She cried. She described loneliness, shame, depression. She said she trusted me to care for the twins temporarily. She said when she tried to re-enter their lives, I emotionally barricaded them. I sat there, hands folded, absorbing a version of events so detached from reality it almost felt surreal. Then Daniel Reeves delivered his quiet blow. Mrs. Ellis, he said, after your husband passed away, isn't it true you were grieving profoundly? Yes. And isn't it also true you told friends you felt alone? Yes. Isn't it possible you filled that void with these children? The implication hung in the air. Replacement. As if I had stolen grandchildren to compensate for widowhood. That was the moment something inside me shifted. Not anger. Clarity. Because Claire believed something very specific. She believed there was no paper trail. She believed time alone wasn't enough to override biology. She believed I had nothing concrete. She was wrong. Inside my purse that day was a sealed envelope. I hadn't shown it to Susan yet. I hadn't mentioned it in depositions. I hadn't revealed it in pretrial statements. Because timing matters. And I was waiting. As the judge turned to Claire and asked, "Did you ever formally relinquish custody?" She answered confidently. "No. Never." That's when I realized she either truly forgot. Or she believed I did. And 14 years earlier, in a hospital room filled with machines and fear, she had signed something she clearly never expected to see again. But what was inside that envelope wasn't just a signature. It was something far more dangerous. 14 years is a long time to forget what you signed. That was the thought running through my mind as Claire sat confidently in that courtroom, hands folded, posture steady, insisting she had never relinquished anything. Never signed anything. Never surrendered anything. Never intended to disappear. Confidence can be convincing. But paper is quieter. And permanent. Let me take you back to that hospital room. Claire was 32. Pale against white sheets. Monitors blinking softly. The emergency C-section had been chaotic, fetal distress, rapid consent forms, doctors moving quickly. I remember gripping her hand before they wheeled her away. When she came back, groggy but conscious, she asked me to close the door. Not dramatically. Just softly. "Mom," she said, her voice fragile but deliberate, "open my purse." It was on the chair beside the bed. Inside was a manila envelope. Slightly bent at the corners. Prepared. Prepared. Have you ever realized, years later, that something wasn't impulsive at all? Inside were documents. Temporary guardianship authorization. Medical decision authority. Caretaker affidavit. And attached, something more detailed. A conditional custodial intent agreement. Typed. Dated. Signed. Even fingerprinted. The hospital social worker, Karen Douglas, age 44 at the time, had notarized it that afternoon. Claire had looked at me, really looked at me, and said, "If something happens to me, promise you'll raise them. If something happens." I asked her what she meant. She didn't elaborate. She just pressed the pen into my hand. I signed as guardian. I remember thinking it was precautionary. Post-surgery fear. Hormones. Mortality awareness. But there was a clause. A very specific clause. If the biological mother fails to resume physical custody or maintain consistent contact for a continuous period of 5 years, this guardianship shall reflect permanent custodial intent. 5 years. Not 14. 5. I kept that envelope in a safe at home for years. After the first year of silence, I considered filing it with the court formally. But my attorney at the time advised patience. If Claire resurfaced repentant, things could be resolved quietly. She never resurfaced. And then life moved forward. School recitals. Broken arms. Teenage moods. Report cards. Driving permits. The envelope remained sealed. Not forgotten. Preserved. Back in the courtroom, Daniel Reeves asked again, "Did you sign any document relinquishing your parental rights?" Claire answered firmly. "No." That was my moment. I leaned toward Susan Patel and whispered, "It's time." She looked confused for a split second. I hadn't told her. Not fully. I reached into my purse and removed the envelope. 14-year-old paper. Slightly yellowed edges. Still sealed. I handed it to Susan. She opened it carefully, scanned the top page, and her expression shifted from professional neutrality to sharp attention. "Your Honor," she said calmly, "we would like to submit Exhibit B." The courtroom air changed. Judge Whitman adjusted his glasses as the documents were passed forward. Silence settled heavy. You could hear pages turning. First page. Second page. Signature page. And then the handwritten letter. Because there was one more piece. A single sheet of paper. Folded twice. Claire's handwriting unmistakable. The judge read it silently first. His brow tightened slightly. Then he read part of it aloud. "If I don't come back, tell them I wasn't strong enough." A pause. "And please, do not tell them I chose this." The room felt suspended in something fragile. Claire's composure cracked. "I was medicated," she said quickly. "I had just had surgery. I wasn't in my right mind." Judge Whitman didn't respond immediately. He kept reading. The fingerprints were clear. The notary seal visible. The date matched hospital records. He looked up slowly. Then he asked me the question that opened this story. "Do they know about this?" The letter. The clause. The 5-year condition. The line about choosing. I swallowed. No. Not yet. Because here's the truth, I protected her. Even after she vanished. Even after she accused me. Even after she tried to dismantle 14 years of motherhood. I never told Ethan and Lily their mother wrote that she might not come back. I never told them she framed it as weakness instead of choice. Judge Whitman ordered a brief recess to verify the authenticity. Claire sat frozen. Daniel Reeves whispered urgently to her. For the first time since this began, she looked uncertain. Not angry. Not emotional. Uncertain. And then something unexpected happened. Ethan raised his hand slightly from the gallery. 14 years old. But steady. "Your Honor," he said respectfully, "may we speak?" Judges don't always allow minors to address the court directly. But Whitman nodded. Ethan stood. "She never called," he said simply. "Not on birthdays. Not when I broke my arm. Not when Lily had surgery last year." Lily stood next to him. "We don't know her," she said. "We know Grandma." There was no hatred in their voices. Just truth. Unembellished. The recess ended. The judge returned to the bench. He had the documents. He had the timeline. He had the children's statements. But family court decisions are rarely simple. Even with signatures. Even with abandonment. Even with letters that contradict testimony. Because the final ruling wouldn't just determine custody. It would determine identity. And as Judge Whitman prepared to speak, I realized something chilling. Even with the envelope. This could still go either way. The courtroom was so quiet you could hear someone shift in their seat 3 rows back. Judge Harold Whitman adjusted the documents in front of him one final time. 14 years of silence condensed into a stack of paper no more than half an inch thick. It's strange, isn't it? How something that consumed over a decade of your life can be summarized in a few exhibits. He cleared his throat. In matters of custody, he began evenly, the court prioritizes the best interest of the children. Not biology. Not guilt. Not rewritten narratives. Best interest. He acknowledged the guardianship agreement. The notarization. The 5-year clause. The handwritten letter. The absence of contact. The financial inquiries made just months before Claire filed her petition. He didn't rush. He didn't dramatize. He simply laid out the facts. 14 years, he said, looking directly at Claire, is not a temporary absence. Claire's shoulders stiffened. He continued. The petitioner failed to demonstrate consistent effort to resume parental responsibility. The respondent has provided stable, continuous care since birth. Stable. Continuous. Words that sound simple, but require years of showing up. He then turned toward Ethan and Lily. At age 14, your voices matter. A pause. This court grants permanent custodial authority to Margaret Ellis. The air shifted. Not explosive relief. Not cheers. Just something steady settling into place. Claire inhaled sharply. The judge wasn't finished. Visitation may occur under supervised conditions, he added, only if the minors consent. Consent. That word echoed differently. For the first time in this entire process, the twins had power. Claire stood as the session adjourned. For a second, just a second. I thought she might approach them gently. Instead, she stepped forward with urgency. I didn't think you'd keep it, she whispered to me. Not I'm sorry. Not I was wrong. Just that. I met her eyes. I didn't think you'd forget. There are moments in life when anger would be easier. But what I felt wasn't anger. It was clarity. Claire looked at Ethan and Lily. They didn't move toward her. They didn't recoil either. They just stood slightly behind me. Not out of fear. Out of familiarity. Do you know what 14 years of bedtime stories does? It builds gravity. People orbit what feels stable. Claire left the courtroom first. No dramatic scene. No collapse. Just a quiet exit. And suddenly, the envelope felt heavier in my purse than it had that morning. Because here's the part that lingers. The twins don't know about the letter. They don't know their mother wrote, "Do not tell them I chose this." They believe she struggled. They believe she wasn't ready. They don't know she anticipated not returning. Should they? That question hasn't stopped echoing. Let me ask you something directly. If you were in my place, would you tell them? Would you hand a 14-year-old the knowledge that their mother prepared for permanent absence? Or would you let them hold on to a softer version of the truth? Some truths clarify. Some truths fracture. There's a difference between honesty and harm. 14 years ago, I didn't choose to become their mother. I responded. That's it. People talk about maternal instinct like it's biological. But presence is a decision made repeatedly. On sick days. On hard days. On days when no one thanks you. Claire created life. I sustained it. And that distinction matters more than any courtroom argument ever could. Before we left the courthouse, Ethan turned to me. Does this mean we're staying? He asked quietly. Yes, I said. He nodded once. Logical. Processing. Lily hugged me hard. Tight enough to wrinkle my blazer. Good, she whispered. That was it. No dramatic music. No cinematic slow motion. Just relief. Real, grounded relief. As we walked to the car, I looked at them, nearly grown now, opinions forming, independence emerging, and realized something unexpected. Claire didn't come back for babies. She came back for teenagers. People with personalities already shaped. Values already rooted. Loyalty already earned. And you cannot fast-forward bonding. You can't retroactively mother. So let me circle back to where we started. Do they know about this? Not yet. Maybe one day. Maybe when they're older. Maybe when they ask deeper questions. Maybe when they're ready to see complexity without it cutting them. But for now? They know who showed up. And sometimes that's enough. If this story made you question what truly defines a parent, biology or presence, I want to hear your thoughts. Would you have fought the same way? Would you reveal the letter? Do you believe 14 years of absence can be explained away? Tell me in the comments. Because family isn't always simple. And love isn't always symmetrical. She left me with 2 newborns. 14 years later, she came back for children who no longer needed her. And this time, I was ready.